Just how battle-ready is President Cyril Ramaphosa to tackle the political and economic challenges in South Africa amid an ongoing COVID-19 crisis? Not only does he face an internal fight back from former President Jacob Zuma and those aligned to him in the governing party, the president also needs to gear up for opposition Democratic Alliance under a brand new leader as we look at the 2021 local government elections. Well, to unpack these issues, I'm now joined by the Vice-Chancellor at Wits University, Professor Adam Habib. Professor Habib, it is a particularly challenging time in South Africa for President Cyril Ramaphosa. I just interviewed Rehana Rousseau, author and veteran journalist, about the impact of corruption in Mpumalanga on the, ecotourism and the economy of Mpumalanga. And of course, one of the big things that we fail to often mention is the link between the current economic crisis that we're facing and the state capture that was effectively in operation for almost a decade. If you look at the way in which, testimony at the Zondo Commission of Inquiry is happening, and also the arrests that the law enforcement agencies have made, and the fight back that is coming from President Jacob Zuma, he is, forced to come to the Commission in the month of November. Do you think that President Ramaphosa is strong enough in the African National Congress to, continue this pushback and clean up state institutions?
So let me start by saying that I think we're in a much better space than we were 2 years ago. But as you suggest, this is a transient state. It's not good enough, and we're not out of the woods, and we have to make some very, very hard decisions to get out of the woods. The second thing I want to say is that what Rehana Rousseau suggests in a book, and perhaps what the state capture hearings reveal, is that our problem is not only corruption, of course it is, but it is also incompetence. If you just listen to Dudu Mayeni or Kwinana, you really cringe not only at the fact that they were corrupt, but the fact that they're this incompetent, and we put them at the leadership of public institutions in our society. And that is, we've got to address both. We've got to address both the corruption, but we've got to address the incredible incompetence of state officials in this process. And that's the second thing I wanted to say. And then the third, which is really responding to your question, I think for Cyril Ramaphosa to do that, he has to have a firmer back. He's not going to charm himself into a better political system. This is not Canada. It's not New Zealand. You have to have the courage to stare down the malevolent politicians and state officials in the opposition party, but also within your party. Ace Magashule, and what you've just been interviewed around, the deputy president himself. Because if you don't deal with that deputy president, that is your successor. And what he will do to South Africa will be a disaster compared to what has happened elsewhere. So, I really worry about him having the courage to take on the forces within his party.
Now, a lot of people are saying that part of the reason why the president is moving slowly, the president is constantly quoted as saying he cannot be interfering with law enforcement institutions. When he does that, the entire project to restore the integrity of these institutions will be undone. And of course, he's completely right about that. But the point is that a political leader of a deeply divided party whose actions stand to actually put some of his own colleagues and comrades in jail at the very least, isn't necessarily always on solid ground. If you look at the balance of forces in the African National Congress, considering, what Duduzane Zuma, Jacob Zuma's son, has been saying, I mean, he flew in almost like someone who had a particular job to come and do. One of our newspapers, suggested that he's trying to go up against Cyril Ramaphosa. But it certainly looks as if those aligned to Jacob Zuma is looking for someone that can capture the popular imagination determination of rank-and-file members of the African National Congress to make a stand against Ramaphosa. Do you think that such a move is one, going to materialize? Could they come with a push to try and bring someone as an alternative to Ramaphosa at this stage?
I'm not so sure that they can. I think whatever you might say about the state capture hearings, it has exposed the utter corruption and the utter incompetence of the Zuma administration and the people around Jacob Zuma. And so I think that that's there. But also it can only happen if Cyril Ramaphosa doesn't show leadership. And that leadership has to be at a political level. And it seems to me it has to do two things. The first part of it is it has to appeal to the rank and file and make very clear that I can look after your radical social justice agenda in a manner that allows you to benefit and that builds still the economy and the society itself. That social justice is not a zero-sum game. You need to be able to articulate that. You need to be able to say, I can look after the interests of the poor rural worker or the marginalized young youth simultaneously by growing the economy. So he has to reimagine the economic inclusion project. And he has to spin it in a way that it doesn't become a zero-sum game. Because the way Jacob Zuma and them are doing is saying you can only benefit if those white monopoly capital loses. He has to articulate it and say, here's an agenda that I can advance that will benefit you, that will bring you into the economic mainstream, that will look after your family, that will look after your children.
Now, if you take, Adam, the question of land as an issue, which is completely emotive for our historical reasons, black South Africans were effectively dispossessed from their land, forced into labor to, of course, work on the mines. And we have seen the squandering of the political opportunity to bring justice to those who have had been dispossessed through, in this book that Rehana had written, through the land restitution program, where people have literally conned poor black people out of their ability to get land, to access land, and they've lined their own pockets. But what has not been able to happen is that they haven't been able to tone down the rhetoric on the need for land justice. So instead of dealing with the corruption in the land reform program, what you had was a complicated political process to try and change the constitution and to suggest that we need a policy alternative when the existing policy was actually just corrupted.
Yes, so the problem with that is that you didn't lead on land, you followed the EFF and you tried to tweak them and make it reasonable. What you should have done is you have enough land that is available in state hands. You could have led and said, within 12 months, I am distributing this land and providing support. You could have gone to big mining capital and asked them to release large tracts of land that they are willing to do and allow that and spin that in a manner that says, yeah, see, I've got white monopoly capital distributing, giving us land so that we can distribute. So you could have carved a messaging and a radical agenda on land that was more proactive. Instead, what Cyril Ramaphosa did was get caught out by the EFF, who played the game, and he was busy catching up. And that's the problem with Cyril Ramaphosa. He's playing catch up with everybody. I want to say one other thing. You can do as much as you want in politics. What you have to do is take political leadership. You have to stand up and say, I've got a problem. Jacob Zuma was corrupt. He was taking money, he was stealing it, not giving it to poor people. What you have to say is the General Secretary of the ANC is corrupt. He was really incompetent and poor people suffered the consequence in the Free State. He has to lead and take them on. Instead, what he's coming off as is as he's cowed. He's trying to negotiate with them all the time. That's not political leadership in the deeply divided context we are, and that's what he has to do in a powerful way as we go forward. If he doesn't do that, they'll eat him alive.
Okay, Adam, hold that thought. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we look specifically at the economy and what room Cyril Ramaphosa has to maneuver on that score. Don't go anywhere.